Leonard Kingsley had always believed that money was the only language the world truly respected. For 4 decades, he had spoken it fluently, eloquently even, commanding boardrooms, buying silence, purchasing loyalty. He wasn't just a man, he was an empire, dressed in silk ties and Italian leather shoes. That evening he entered Le Rêve, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, with the stride of a king returning to his throne. Heads turned when he passed, not because of who he was, but because of what he represented: wealth, power, untouchable confidence. The maitre d', a tall man with a practiced smile, greeted him with a bow usually reserved for royalty. "Mr. Kingsley, your table is ready," he said, as though the words themselves carried prestige. Leonard adjusted his cufflinks, gold and heavy. As it should be. He sat at the best table in the center of the dining hall, a glass wall behind him opening to the skyline. The city twinkled beneath him as if bowing to its master. Waiters floated like dancers around him, filling his glass, laying out silverware with reverence. To anyone watching, Leonard Kingsley looked like a man in absolute command of his world. But behind the gleam of polished shoes and tailored suits, cracks had begun to form. Cracks he refused to acknowledge. The meal was flawless, of course. The finest wines imported from Bordeaux, a cut of steak so tender it melted under the knife, and a dessert so delicate it seemed like art more than food. Leonard ate slowly, savoring each bite, not just for taste, but for affirmation. This was who he was, this was the proof he still reigned. When the bill finally arrived, nestled inside a sleek black folder, Leonard took his time opening it. He didn't even glance at the numbers. Men like him didn't count. He slid a platinum card across the table with a practiced flick of his wrist, a silent reminder of his status. The waiter bowed slightly, took the card, and vanished into the shadows. Leonard leaned back, sipping the last of his wine, already imagining the subtle nod of respect when the waiter returned. But instead of swift efficiency, minutes passed. Too many minutes. A whisper of unease threaded into Leonard's chest. When the waiter finally returned, his smile had disappeared. His hands trembled slightly as he placed the card on the table. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Kingsley," he said softly. "Your card has been declined." The words landed like a slap. For a moment, Leonard didn't even process them. Declined? That word wasn't part of his world. "There must be a mistake," Leonard said sharply. His voice carried across the restaurant, drawing glances. "Run it again." The waiter nodded quickly, as though trying to ward off a storm, and disappeared once more. Leonard felt eyes on him. The couple at the next table glanced over their menus, whispering. A group of businessmen in the corner stifled chuckles. His jaw tightened. He was Leonard Kingsley. He was not a man who got declined. When the waiter returned, the look in his eyes confirmed the unthinkable. He leaned closer, voice hushed but failing to hide the truth. "I ran it twice more, sir. The bank rejected the transaction." The restaurant seemed to fall silent. Or perhaps it was just Leonard's ears ringing with humiliation. He felt his face burn. The room tilted, the chandeliers above mocking him with their brilliance. He snatched the card from the waiter's hand. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The words tumbled out like a reflex, hollow and desperate. "Yes, sir," the waiter whispered. "That is why I checked 3 times. A ripple of laughter spread from the businessman in the corner. A woman in pearls covered her mouth, but her eyes glittered with amusement. The maitre d' hovered nearby, clearly torn between protecting the restaurant's reputation and humiliating a once-valued guest. Leonard's heart pounded. He reached into his wallet, pulling out another card. Gold this time. He tossed it onto the table with a forced smirk. "Try that one." The waiter obeyed. Again, minutes stretched like hours. Again, the return was fatal. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kingsley. This one also declined." It was over. The whispers spread like wildfire now, cruel and relentless. "Isn't that Kingsley? The tycoon? I heard his company's stock plummeted." "Guess it's true, even the mighty fall." Leonard sat frozen, gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles whitened. His empire, his name, his carefully constructed image, reduced to a spectacle in a single night. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "Enough," he barked. "I'll call my bank personally. This is their mistake, not mine." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The debts, the lawsuits, the frozen assets, they had finally caught up with him. And here, in this glittering hall of power, he was naked. The maitre d' approached, lowering his voice, but not enough to mask the condescension. "Mr. Kingsley, I'm afraid we must settle this bill tonight. If you cannot—" The sentence hung unfinished, but the meaning was clear. "If you cannot pay, you are no longer welcome." Leonard's lips pressed into a thin line. For the first time in his adult life, he had nothing to say. And then, from the edge of the room, a small voice broke the silence. "I can help." All eyes turned. Near the entrance, a little girl stood, no older than 7, clutching a small purse decorated with stickers. Her dress was plain, her shoes scuffed. She was out of place in the grandeur of Le Rêve, but her eyes shone with determination. The crowd erupted in laughter, some amused, some cruel. "Look at that," a man chuckled. "The billionaire needs rescuing from a child." Leonard's humiliation deepened, but the girl walked forward undeterred. She reached the table, opened her tiny purse, and pulled out a handful of coins and crumpled bills. "You can use mine," she said simply. The room fell silent again, not out of respect, but disbelief. Leonard Kingsley, a man who had once bought cities, stared at the handful of change offered by a child. And for the first time in his life he felt something unfamiliar, something that wasn't anger or pride. It was shame. Leonard Kingsley had faced ruthless competitors, venomous lawsuits, and even betrayals from partners he once called friends. But nothing had ever pierced his armor like the sight of a little girl holding out her crumpled bills to cover his shame. Her small hand trembled as she offered the coins. Pennies and nickels slid across the white tablecloth, clinking against crystal glassware like tiny bells announcing his humiliation. The laughter that had rippled through the restaurant moments earlier now gave way to hushed disbelief. Leonard's throat tightened. "No," he said quickly, almost too quickly, pushing the coins back toward her. His voice cracked in a way that startled him. "Put that away. This isn't your problem." The girl looked up at him, eyes wide, innocent yet steady. "But you need help," she said softly. A murmur swept through the dining hall. Some smirked at the absurdity. Others looked away, embarrassed by their own cruelty. The maitre d', trying to maintain composure, cleared his throat. "Sir, if the young lady is with you—" "She is not," Leonard snapped, then immediately regretted the sharpness. The child flinched slightly, but did not withdraw her hand. She pressed a $1 bill flat against the table. "It's enough for me and my mum to eat for 2 days," she said quietly, almost proudly. "But you look like you need it more." The words struck Leonard like a dagger. For decades he had been the man who had more. More money, more houses, more cars, more power. And now, in front of the entire room, a child believed he needed her meager savings more than she did. He stared at her, unable to find words. His pride screamed to reject the offer, to reclaim control, to remind everyone in the room who he was. But another voice, one he hadn't heard in years, whispered inside him, "Look. Really look." The girl was tiny, her shoes worn thin, her dress faded at the seams. Her purse was decorated with stickers, peeling at the edges. She had nothing to give. And yet she gave anyway. The laughter returned, sharper now, slicing through the tension. A man at a corner table chuckled cruelly. "Imagine that, Leonard Kingsley rescued by a piggy bank." Others joined in. Some clapped mockingly. "Bravo," one woman jeered. Perhaps he should hire her as his new banker. Leonard's chest tightened. Rage and humiliation battled inside him. He wanted to shout, to silence them, to hurl his glass against the wall. But when he looked back at the girl, he saw none of their cruelty reflected in her eyes. Only sincerity. "Why would you do this?" he asked, his voice breaking. She tilted her head. "Because when people need help, you should help them. Isn't that what grown-ups say?" The restaurant fell quiet again. The question hung in the air, heavier than gold, sharper than any insult. The girl's mother suddenly appeared, rushing from the far side of the room. She was dressed in a server's uniform, her hair pulled back hastily, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Emily!" she hissed, pulling the girl close. "What are you doing?" "Helping," Emily said simply, clutching her purse. The mother's eyes darted to Leonard, filled with panic. "I'm so sorry, sir. She doesn't understand." But Leonard raised a hand, stopping her. For once the arrogance was gone from his gesture. "She understands more than anyone here," he said quietly. The mother blinked, stunned. Around the room the whispers resumed, but they sounded different now, less mocking, more curious. Leonard turned back to the girl. "Emily, right?" She nodded. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You have given me something no one else in this room could. Not money, not power, but kindness." Her small brow furrowed. "Kindness doesn't pay for food," she said matter-of-factly. Leonard almost laughed, almost. The absurdity of it all, the brutal truth in her words, cut deeper than any market crash ever had. The maitre d' cleared his throat again, visibly uncomfortable. "Sir, the bill still stands. We require—" Leonard straightened, regaining a fragment of his old composure. "You'll be paid," he said firmly. "Not tonight, but you'll be paid." The maitre d' hesitated. Rules were rules, yet something in Leonard's tone carried weight, even in disgrace. He gave a stiff nod and retreated. The crowd murmured discontent. Some disappointed the spectacle was ending. But Leonard ignored them. His focus remained on the girl, who still held out her handful of change. He gently closed her small hand around the coins. "Keep it, Emily. Never let anyone tell you your kindness is too small." Her eyes lit up, though confusion lingered. "But then how will you pay?" He hesitated. For the first time he admitted the truth aloud. "I don't know." The girl's mother tugged her away gently, whispering apologies. Leonard watched them go, feeling something hollow crack open inside his chest. The laughter of the wealthy still echoed around him, but it no longer cut the same way, because in that moment, it wasn't their laughter that mattered. It was the voice of a little girl reminding him of a truth he had forgotten long ago. Money was not the only language the world respected. Sometimes it was kindness. He left the restaurant with no applause, no dignity, only the faint image of a child's coins glinting under chandelier light. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a king. He felt like a man, broken, humiliated, but alive in a way he hadn't been in decades. And as the night air bit at his skin, one thought refused to leave him. Why would she help me when no one else did? Leonard Kingsley had always believed that humiliation was something that happened to other people. Competitors, weak men, dreamers who dared to challenge him without the armor of wealth. But as he rode home in the back of his sleek black sedan, the taste of humiliation clung to him like smoke after a fire. The city lights blurred through the tinted glass, but everywhere he looked he saw the child's small hand, her coins shining under the chandeliers of Le Rêve. It wasn't the laughter of the wealthy that haunted him. It was her voice. "You look like you need it more." His driver, Carlson, glanced through the rearview mirror, but wisely said nothing. Leonard sat stiff, his hands clasped as though still holding back the storm inside. When they arrived at his penthouse, the marble lobby was silent. Too silent. His phone buzzed furiously in his pocket. Headlines had already spread like wildfire. Billionaire's credit cards declined at city's most exclusive restaurant. The fall of Kingsley, from king to clown. Leonard shut the phone off, but the silence in his penthouse screamed louder than any headline. By morning, the calls began. First, his lawyer, then his accountant, then Darrow, his oldest rival in business disguised as a partner. "They're circling like vultures," his lawyer warned. "The bank froze assets," the accountant admitted. Darrow's voice carried a smirk through the line. "Leonard, the city eats its weak. Best to bow out before you're devoured." Leonard hung up before Darrow could finish. His empire was collapsing, and the world was delighted to watch. But through all the noise, one image persisted, the little girl's face, steady, unashamed, offering him what no man had ever dared, genuine kindness. 3 days later, Leonard found himself outside a modest grocery store in a neighborhood he had once driven past without noticing. The chauffeur looked baffled when Leonard ordered him to stop there. Inside, the store smelled faintly of bread and detergent. The linoleum floors were cracked, the lights too bright. And then he saw her. Emily. The little girl from Le Rêve. She stood on tiptoe at the counter, clutching a carton of milk and a loaf of bread. Her mother stood behind her, sorting through coupons with tired eyes. Leonard froze. He hadn't expected to find her so soon, so plainly. She wasn't framed by chandeliers now, nor mocked by the wealthy. She was just a child in a grocery store. Emily spotted him first. Her face lit up with recognition. "It's you!" she exclaimed. Her mother turned, her smile faltering when she realized who stood there. "Mr. Kingsley." Leonard raised a hand gently. "Please. Just Leonard." The mother hesitated, clearly wary. "What are you doing here?" He swallowed, uncharacteristically unsure, looking for perspective. Emily grinned, unbothered by the tension. "Did you pay your bill yet?" The question, innocent as sunlight, cut through Leonard like glass. He let out a bitter chuckle. "Not yet." Her mother placed the bread and milk on the counter, flustered. "Emily, enough." But Leonard stepped closer. "She's right to ask. I owe more than money now." The cashier rang up the items, and Emily's mother pulled a handful of change from her purse. Leonard watched the coins fall into the cashier's hand, the same sound he had heard days ago. Without thinking, he reached for his wallet. But when he opened it, all he saw were the useless cards frozen by banks that no longer trusted his empire. He froze, humiliated again. Emily noticed. She leaned toward him and whispered, "It's okay. Sometimes grown-ups need help too." Her words, so simple, carried more grace than any lecture. He wanted to laugh, to cry, to collapse under the weight of what she had shown him. Instead, he said, "Emily, may I walk you both home?" Her mother blinked, startled. "That isn't necessary." "Maybe not," Leonard replied softly. "But I think I need it." The walk to their apartment building was short, but to Leonard it felt like crossing a world. The cracked sidewalks, the children playing with second-hand toys, the faded paint of the buildings. It was a universe away from marble floors and glass towers. Yet here, amid the noise of ordinary life, he felt something unfamiliar. Reality. At the doorway, Emily waved. "Thanks for walking us." Leonard nodded, then turned to her mother. "May I too visit again?" She hesitated, then sighed. "If you think it will do you any good. But understand, this is not your world, Mr. Kingsley." Leonard looked down at Emily, who smiled without judgment. "Maybe that's the point," he said. That night, as he sat in his penthouse surrounded by silence, he realized something he had never dared admit. The little girl had not humiliated him. She had saved him, not from debt, not from disgrace, but from himself. And as he looked out at the glittering skyline, Leonard Kingsley wondered for the first time in his life if wealth had blinded him to the only thing of real value: kindness. Leonard Kingsley had lived most of his life in penthouses and boardrooms, where every chair was leather, every wall glass, and every word carefully calculated. Yet 3 days after his encounter with Emily at the grocery store, he found himself once again in her neighborhood, an old part of the city where laundry swayed from balconies and neighbors actually spoke to each other. It unsettled him, not because it was unsafe or unpleasant, but because it was so alive. He had called ahead, hesitantly, awkwardly. Emily's mother, Sarah, had answered, her voice wary. "If you insist on visiting, Mr. Kingsley, I won't stop you, but don't come expecting gratitude." And so he arrived carrying nothing but a paper bag of groceries, purchased with cash. His first deliberate act of humility in decades. The apartment door creaked open. Emily squealed, her face lighting up. "You came!" Sarah appeared behind her, crossing her arms. "She's been asking every hour if you'd really show." Leonard offered the bag, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. "I thought I could contribute her this time." Sarah eyed the bag, then stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, paint peeling in places, but it was filled with warmth. Drawings taped to the fridge, the faint scent of baked bread, a patchwork quilt draped over the couch. It was not wealth, but it was home. Leonard sat stiffly on the couch as Emily plopped down beside him, chattering about school, friends, and the dog she wanted, but couldn't have. Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, pretending not to watch him closely. For the first time in years, Leonard felt like an intruder. Not because he was unwelcome, but because this world wasn't his. Dinner was simple, pasta with tomato sauce, bread and a salad. But to Leonard it felt like a feast, not because of the taste, but because of the laughter. Emily talked with her mouth full, Sarah scolded her gently, and Leonard found himself smiling, genuinely smiling for the first time in months. Halfway through the meal, Emily put down her fork. "Mr. Kingsley?" "Yes, Emily? Why were you so sad at the restaurant?" The question struck like lightning. Sarah nearly dropped her glass. "Emily—" "No, it's all right," Leonard interrupted softly. He stared at the plate for a long moment. Then he said the words he had never said aloud. "Because I thought money was the only thing that made me worth something, and that night, when I didn't have it, I thought I was nothing." Emily frowned. "That's silly." Sarah shot her a look, but Leonard chuckled. "You're right. It is silly." Emily nodded firmly. "You're worth something because you're a person. Everyone is." Leonard's chest tightened. The simplicity of her words carried more wisdom than any philosophy book he had ever read. After dinner, Sarah pulled him aside as Emily washed dishes. "Why are you here, Mr. Kingsley?" Leonard hesitated. "Because your daughter showed me something no one else could, and I don't want to forget it." Sarah studied him, her eyes skeptical yet softening. "You're a billionaire, or at least you were. Men like you don't come here unless they want something. I don't want money," he said quietly. "I want to learn how to live again." Her eyes widened slightly at the honesty. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Emily burst in, tugging Leonard's sleeve. "Tomorrow's my school play. Will you come?" Leonard blinked. He hadn't been invited to anything that wasn't strategic or profitable in years. "A play?" Emily nodded eagerly. "I'm a tree, but a special one. I get to say a line." He laughed, the sound surprising even him. "Then I wouldn't miss it." The next evening, Leonard found himself in a crowded elementary school auditorium. Parents fanned themselves with programs, children peeked from behind curtains, and the air buzzed with excitement. When Emily appeared on stage wearing green felt leaves taped to her arms, she searched the audience until her eyes found him. She waved wildly. He waved back, ignoring the curious stares from the parents around him. Her single line, "Even the smallest seed can grow into something strong," echoed through the hall. Leonard felt it strike him deeper than any keynote speech he had ever given. Afterward, Emily ran into his arms, still glowing from the stage lights. "You came." "Of course I did," he said, holding her tightly. Sarah approached, smiling faintly despite herself. "She hasn't had someone outside of me show up for her in years." Leonard swallowed hard. Then maybe it's time she did. That night, as he walked back to his penthouse, Leonard realized the strangest thing of all. For the first time in his life, he didn't dread being seen as ordinary. Because in Emily's world, ordinary was extraordinary. By Monday morning, the city had already rewritten Leonard Kingsley's story for him. A grainy cell phone video, him at the bistro register, the clerk's awkward shrug, the little girl stepping in with a crumpled 5, hit every gossip feed with a caption sharp enough to cut, "From billionaire to borrower, Kingsley rescued by a child." The clip wasn't cruel on its own. The commentary was. Old colleagues reposted it with winking emojis and lines like, "Liquidity crisis Leo." Finance podcasts joked about the Kingsley ratio, defined as the number of 8-year-olds required to stabilize a once iconic balance sheet. Even the morning business shows got their revs from it. The anchors smirked. The tickers rolled. The world moved on, not realizing that for Leonard, the blade had gone in and stayed. He watched the loop twice in his kitchen and then closed the laptop. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city was a grid of productivity and posture. Inside, the silence rang. His phone buzzed. "Where are you?" asked Evelyn Cho, his former COO and the last gatekeeper to what had been his empire. "At home. We have a path," she said briskly. "You sign a limited consulting deal with Armitage Group. We craft a narrative, strategic sabbatical, rediscovering purpose, advisory role in sustainability. You show up to 3 events, we seed 2 op-eds, do 1 contrite interview, and for the love of God stop appearing in cell phone videos with children bailing you out." "She's not a prop," he said, heat surprising him. "I'm not calling her a prop," Evelyn replied unfazed. "I'm calling your judgment compromised. You want back in? Choose optics over orphan rescue cosplay. There's a panel Wednesday. I told them you'll attend. He stared at the blank screen of his laptop, his reflection a ghost in the glass. Text me the details, he said and hung up. The second call came from a private number. It was shorter and meaner. A familiar voice laughed softly. Lenny, buddy. Didn't know you were crowdsourcing dinner. Tell the kid I'll expense her. Victor Mallory. Deal maker, dinner companion, fair weather friend. Leonard ended the call with a thumb that trembled. He dressed anyway. Suit, tie, the armor of his native land. The office tower lobby smelled like citrus polish and performance. Heads turned as he crossed the marble. A junior analyst halted mid-stride, then pretended to study a fern. Evelyn was waiting in the conference room, crisp as a ledger. A PR consultant perched beside her, tablet ready, teeth professionally kind. We'll keep this simple, Evelyn said. Wednesday night, the Garrick Green Investment Summit. Smile, say stakeholder, sprinkle stewardship, avoid hero narratives involving cash-short magnates and grocery aisle saviors. And for the photo op, you stand next to Halliday, optics of continuity. Continuity of what? Leonard asked. Evelyn's pen didn't pause. Of competence, of belonging to our world. Our world. He felt the door of it swinging on oiled hinges, ready to shut. There's something else, the PR woman added, tapping her screen. The girl's mother, Sarah Bennett. She posted a thank you to the school volunteers last night. Very wholesome. If asked, you don't know them personally. Just a moment of human kindness, like we all should show. Deflect, don't elevate. Don't elevate, he repeated. It keeps you safe, she said. Elevating invites questions. He nodded, a habit older than conscience. The meeting ended with handshakes like contracts. On the sidewalk, the wind off the river cut through the suit that once felt invincible. Mid-afternoon, his phone buzzed again. Not news, a photo. Emily in a paper crown beaming beside a cardboard castle. The caption from Sarah. We're at the community fair until 5. She wanted you to see her crown. No pressure to come. Just, she wanted you to know. No pressure. The phrase that frees you or convicts you. He stood at the corner, light ticking from red to green. A black car idled, driver waiting to take him uptown to a pre-panel reception where men would compare war stories like cufflinks. He could almost hear Evelyn optics continuity. He texted back, on my way, if that's all right. 3 trains later, he climbed the steps into a park that didn't know him. Tents clustered like bright roofs over bake sales and raffles. Kids darted between chalk drawings and tug-of-war ropes. The air smelled like popcorn and pavement. Emily saw him first. She ran across the grass, crown slipping over one eye, and stopped just short of colliding. You came. I said I would, he answered, and only then noticed how many people had turned at the sound of her joy. A few recognized his face, lifted phones, then, seeing the girl, lowered them again. Mercy lives in ordinary places. Sarah approached, less guarded than before, but still a mother measuring risk. You didn't have to. I know, he said. I wanted to. They walked the lanes. Emily demanded tickets for the ring toss and the sponge throw and the world's least fair dart game. Leonard lost everyone and bought 2 lemonades as penance. When Emily darted off to join friends at the face-painting booth, Sarah slipped a glance at him. Your people won't like this, she said quietly. Whatever panel you're supposed to sit on, this doesn't fit. He watched Emily hold still while a volunteer painted a silver star at her temple. Maybe I'm not trying to fit where I used to. Sarah folded her arms against the breeze. I don't need a patron. I don't want to be a headline. In case that's where this is going, he turned to her. I don't want to make you anyone's headline. I just don't want to go back to living like nothing real ever happens. She studied his face the way people study the sky before rain. Real isn't tidy, she said. It spills. It costs. I'm beginning to notice, he answered, and they both almost smiled. A whistle blew from the raffle table. Emily came leaping, hands waving. They're announcing the big prize. They pressed into the crowd as a PTA dad shook a plastic drum. And the winner of the grocery voucher is... He drew a ticket, squinted theatrically. B1924, Emily gasped. That's you. She grabbed Sarah's wrist, lifting her mother's ticket. The small circle around them cheered, the particular private cheer of neighbors who know the weight of a voucher. Sarah laughed, surprised and breathless, and then she stopped, eyes shining in a way that made Leonard swallow. The announcer handed her an envelope. She mouthed, "Thank you to no one and everyone." The spell broke when a voice behind them said, too loudly, "Well, well, if it isn't the comeback king." Victor Mallory, immaculate as rumor, had materialized with two men Leonard recognized from late-night closings. He looked at the paper crown, the envelope in Sarah's hands, the lemonade cups beading on Leonard's knuckles. "Cute," Victor said. "Very redemption arc. Our PR shop could tighten it, but as raw material—" "Victor," Leonard warned. Victor smiled like a blade. "Wednesday, Garrick. Tell me you're not skipping for a bake sale." Emily lifted her chin. "It's not a bake sale, it's our fair." Victor assessed her the way he assessed distressed assets. "Adorable. Kid, here's a tip. Never invest in face paint. It's a depreciating—" "Enough," Leonard said. "Go, please." Victor held his hands up, mock surrender. "Hey, I'm trying to help. Optics, Leo, the internet's already decided you're a punchline. Come fix it." He left a business card tucked under Leonard's lemonade and drifted away in a wake of cologne and condescension. Emily looked up, troubled. "Is he your friend?" "He used to be," Leonard said. "Then he wasn't a very good one." No one argued. As the sun dipped, the crowd thinned and the fair's noise softened to a murmur. Emily's star had flaked to glitter. Sarah tucked the voucher into her bag like a fragile letter. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for letting me," he answered, and meant it more than he knew. On the train back, the city slid by in panes of amber glass. His phone stacked messages like poker chips. "Evelyn, press wants a comment on the fair. Tell me you didn't pose with the crown." PR, drafting holding statement. Mr. Kingsley supports local community initiatives. Approve? Victor, Garrick, 7 p.m. Wear a tie that says I'm sorry. He typed and erased, typed and erased. At a downtown stop, a busker's violin floated up through the station's stone throat. The melody braided itself through all the noise. He put the phone in his pocket and listened until the doors slid shut. The penthouse felt too large that night, a museum where the exhibits had lost their plaques. He set Victor's card on the counter, then slid it into a drawer he rarely opened. On his kitchen table lay the program from Emily's play. He hadn't realized he'd kept it. The back had a doodle in purple marker, a lopsided tree with a smile. Under it, the careful printing of a child. "Thank you for seeing me." His throat tightened. All the conferences and councils and yards of velvet rope. How many times had he been seen and never known it? The phone buzzed again, a final time. "Evelyn. Last chance, Leo. The room on Wednesday will forgive you if you want to be forgiven. Choose," he typed slowly. "If a room forgives me only when I'm useful, it's not forgiveness. It's accounting." He sent it before he could be the man who always deleted the honest lines. The city poured its sleeplessness against the glass. He stood there until his reflection blurred. Somewhere across that grid, a mother placed a voucher in a kitchen drawer and turned off a light. Somewhere, a girl set a paper crown on her nightstand beside a cracked-spined book and whispered the lines she would remember when she was 40. Even the smallest seed can grow into something strong. He didn't know what he would tell the people at the Garrick. He didn't know if he would go. He only knew the fair had felt like a door opening and the old world's invitation like a door closing softly behind him. Leonard went to the drawer, took out Victor's card, and tore it neatly in half. Then he opened his laptop, not to watch the bistro video, but to write the first letter he'd composed, without a lawyer, in 20 years. "Dear Emily, today. I learned that real things don't need permission to be real. Thank you for inviting me to see them." He wrote until the words steadied. Outside, the city kept score the way it always had. Inside, a man finally stopped playing. The invitation wasn't embossed cardstock or a discreet call from a fixer. It arrived as a question with a countdown clock. "Leonard Kingsley," the moderator said on the morning finance show, eyes bright with caffeine and blood sport. "You've been offered a prime slot at the Garrick Summit tomorrow night. Our cameras will be there live. Will you make your case to the market, or keep letting playground optics run your narrative?" A lower third banner flashed. Kingsley, come back or collapse. Next to it, a ticking timer. 23:59:12. Phones pinged across a city that loved deadlines. Investors texted. Former lieutenants resurfaced like old debts. Evelyn messaged once, "You don't get to drift, choose," and then went silent, in the way that meant the train would leave, with or without him. Leonard closed the TV app and stared at his reflection in the black glass. The clock belonged to someone else's urgency, but urgency has a way of slipping its leash. He left the penthouse and walked without aim until his memory supplied one. A brick building with flaking paint and children's laughter behind its doors. The community center smelled like construction paper and floor cleaner. A bulletin board near the entrance announced chess club, tax prep, and an urgent need for volunteers to sort donated coats. Mr. Kingsley. The receptionist recognized him with the wary curiosity of someone who had seen too many cameras and not enough checks that clear. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Sarah Bennett," he said. "If this is a bad time—" "It's never a good time," she said dryly, then softened. "She's in the multi-purpose room rehearsal." He followed the sound of voices counting 8-beat measures. Inside, a dozen kids marked choreography under the patient command of 2 high school volunteers. Cardboard trees leaned against a wall, a sky painted by small hands dried on 3 long tables. Emily, in a t-shirt spattered with more colors than a sunset, was teaching a little boy how to glue glitter without turning the floor into a galaxy. Sarah was folding programs beside the stage. When she saw him, she glanced instinctively toward her daughter, then back to him. The set of her shoulders said both welcome and caution. "You found us," she said. "I was in the neighborhood." He winced at how implausible that sounded in a city where neighborhoods seldom touched by accident. "Can we talk?" 10 minutes, she said, checking the wall clock. "And not where microphones happen." He smiled, grateful and stung by the implied memory of microphones. They stepped into a hallway lined with art projects. Handprints transformed into turkeys, collages of autumn leaves, a poster that read, "Be kind or be quiet," in wobbly capitals. "I got invited to the Garrick Summit," he said. "You always get invited to rooms like that." "Not lately," he answered. "This time it's live. They want redemption with hors d'oeuvres." "And you want—" "What?" Sarah asked. "Permission? Advice? Blessing?" The word blessing caught. He'd had endorsements and back-channel nods all his life. None had ever felt like a blessing. "I want to tell the truth," he said finally, "and I don't know if that's possible in a room that profits from polished lies." She considered that, then tilted her head. "The truth about what?" "About why a card declined," he said, surprised to hear the sentence plain. "About chasing a game until I forgot what winning meant. About a little girl who paid for my dinner with $5 and burned down the scaffolding I'd mistaken for a life." Sarah's mouth tugged into a reluctant smile. That would break the program between stakeholder and stewardship. They stood with the poster, "Be kind or be quiet," swinging slightly in the HVAC breeze. "Leonard," she said, using his name like a hinge that could open or close, "I need to say something before this gets dragged anywhere public. Boundaries." He nodded. "Say them." "No cameras around Emily. If you go to the Garrick and they ask about her, you don't. She's 8. She's not a metaphor, a brand, or your absolution. Don't show up with gifts that change the way kids look at her. Don't promise what you can't keep. If you support this center, it's through the director, not through us, and if you're in our life at all, it's because you show up on Tuesdays to move risers and on Saturdays to slice fruit for intermission, not because you stood under bright lights and made a speech that trended." He absorbed it like a man discovering gravity after years in orbit. "Okay," he said. "All of it." "Yes." "And one more," she added. "If you choose the room tomorrow, don't use us to feel brave. Be brave there, because it's true." He wanted to argue that truth and bravery had always been synonyms in his private thesaurus. He wanted to say he had faced down markets and ministers, but bravery without risk isn't courage, it's choreography. He settled for a small nod. A boombox inside the multi-purpose room clicked off. Kids cheered. Emily burst into the hallway, saw them, and ran over. "We added a bridge," she announced. "Not the kind cars go on, the kind in songs." Can I hear it? Leonard asked. She thought, then shook her head with solemn professionalism. Not until it's ready, but you can help with the coats. We're sorting by size. He followed her to a mountain of donations and took instruction from an 8-year-old who understood logistics better than most consultants. Small, medium, large, boys, girls, unisex. Sarah watched from a folding chair, a faint smile softening the worry that never left a mother's face. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it until the coats were sorted, the mountain transformed into neat rows like a small benevolent army. When the rehearsal ended, he said his goodbyes and stepped into the weak sun of late afternoon. Only then did he look at his messages. Bivlin, you're ghosting. Bad look. Call me. PR. We can craft a humility arc. Need a quote by 6 p.m. Victor, live broadcast means live rescue. I can throw you a softball from the floor. Line up an applause break. DM me. Unknown. Mr. Kingsley, my name is Celeste Dunham, producer at Money Matters Live. We'll have you after the keynote. Families make America run. Maybe tell us about the little girl? Human interest. He stared at the last message until the words blurred into a net. He wrote one reply to Evelyn. If I speak, it won't be the speech you want. She responded with a typing ellipsis that blinked, vanished, blinked again, and then nothing. At home, the sunset climbed the glass like a slow fire. He set an alarm for dawn without knowing why, and slept in a dreamless collapse. He woke to rain that stitched the city together with silver thread. The Garrick's invitation sat in his inbox like a summons. He showered, shaved, put on the suit that signaled contrition without surrender. He took the elevator down, told the driver the address, and then at the next light changed his mind. Detour, he said. Brooklyn, Bridgeview Elementary. The driver cut him a look in the rear view and then navigated, unbothered by the whims of the wealthy. In the school office, a secretary with sovereign energy looked up over bifocals. Can I help you? I'm here to see the principal, he said, realizing he didn't know the principal's name. You and everyone else, she said. Do you have an appointment? No. Then sit. He sat. 10 minutes later, a man in a tweed jacket with a coffee stain near the cuff waved him in. I've got 4 minutes. I'm not here for a photo op, Leonard said, feeling how suspicious that sounded. I want to ask what you need that money never seems to find. The principal's eyebrows rose, suspiciousness bending toward interest. We need aftercare funding that doesn't come with press releases. We need a grant for music that doesn't vanish when the donor gets bored. We need volunteers who show up on rainy Tuesdays. Write me a list, Leonard said, and a policy for anonymity if you want it. Why? The principal asked. What do you get? Nothing, he said, and realized with a shock that it felt like oxygen. I get nothing. The principal studied him a beat longer, then pulled a legal pad from a drawer and wrote without flourish. He tore off a page. Start there. If you flinch, I'll never take your call again. I won't, Leonard said, and meant it. The Garrick's lobby was a greenhouse of wealth. Glass, fern, chrome, and faces that had never been told no before breakfast. A red light atop a camera rig blinked its appetite. Evelyn found him by the coat check, eyes scanning his suit for the correct pennants. You look almost safe, she said. Almost. Don't improvise, don't apologize to abstractions, apologize to shareholders, and dear God, don't bring up that child. He wanted to tell her he'd been to a place where apologies weren't currency. Instead, he said, Thank you, Evelyn. For what? She asked, thrown. For telling me the truth all those years, even when I mistook it for inconvenience. She blinked, then looked away before anything like feeling could turn their history into a complication. They're ready, follow the red carpet, try not to bleed on it. Backstage, a stagehand clipped a mic to his lapel. The moderator shook his hand with a warmth calibrated to read as genuine to 1 million viewers. Just be yourself, he said jovially, which is what people say when they want you to be the version of yourself that won't frighten them. The lights blew open. Applause rose, tidy as a spreadsheet. He walked to the lectern, and for a second the old muscle memory seized the controls. Joke, pivot, reassure. But the rain had followed him inside. He could smell it in his hair. Good evening, he began. I'm Leonard Kingsley, and this is the part where I'm supposed to say I've learned, that I'm grateful for second chances, that I've recentered my values. A ripple of comfortable recognition moved through the room. I could say those phrases, he continued, and they would land like a stock photo, perfect lighting, no truth. He glanced at the front row, where Victor smiled sharp encouragement, and Evelyn watched like a surgeon. So I'll say something else. The night my card declined, a child paid for my dinner, not because she knew my name, because she was raised to see need and meet it. That moment didn't humiliate me, it humbled me. There's a difference. The room shifted. Some crossed arms loosened, others folded tighter. I'm not here to harvest that moment for my brand, he said. I won't name her, I won't show her picture. She isn't my redemption arc. She is a reminder that dignity exists where we don't look. If I get to rebuild anything, it will not be by telling you a beautiful story and accepting your applause. It will be by doing boring things consistently, funding aftercare, buying instruments that don't make headlines, showing up on rainy Tuesdays. A cough, a whisper, the metallic taste of risk. If you want a plan, he went on, here it is. I will not take a consulting role. I will serve on no boards this year. I'm redirecting my speaking fee budget to 5 schools you've never heard of. I will meet with auditors and attorneys tomorrow to unwind arrangements that insulated me from consequences I clearly needed. And if that makes this room less eager to have me, that's fine. Rooms like this trained me to believe belonging equals goodness. It doesn't. Silence, the kind that has weight. He looked into the camera, imagining not markets but a kitchen where a paper crown dried beside a math worksheet. To the people who work in places that smell like construction paper and floor cleaner, if my name makes your work harder, I'll stay out of your way. If I can be useful quietly, ask. To shareholders who wanted me to say the right words, I wish you well. To my friends, if you need me at a dais, I'll disappoint you. If you need me at a coat drive, I'll be there. He stepped back. No applause. Then from somewhere not the front row, a single pair of hands. Then a few more. Then many, uneven and unscripted. Not a standing ovation, but a human one. Messy, reluctant, real. Backstage, microphones hovered, questions sharpened. Mr. Kingsley, who is the girl? Are you walking away from the street? Is this a stunt? He said, no comment on minors, and kept walking. Evelyn caught his sleeve. You just set fire to the safety net. He smiled, tired and unafraid. Maybe it was a hammock. Maybe it... Outside, rain needled the sidewalks. He pulled off his tie and felt the air on his throat like truth. His phone buzzed. Sarah. Saw the clip. You didn't use her. Thank you. Emily, from Sarah's phone. We finished the bridge. It's good. He typed, I'll bring oranges on Saturday if that's all right. Sarah. It is. Boundaries still stand. They should, he wrote back. The countdown clock had run to 0 on a screen somewhere. In the wet reflection of a dark shop window, he didn't look like a comeback or a collapse. He looked like a man learning how to live without an audience. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't judge him. It made room. Quer que eu avance para o capítulo 7. 1000 palavras em inglês, onde o mercado reage, Victor tenta sabotá-lo com uma exposição sobre Sarah, e Leonard escolhe enfrentar, desta vez protegendo Emily e o centro com ações concretas. The morning after the Garrick Summit, Leonard Kingsley woke to headlines that didn't know how to categorize him. Kingsley defies investors, declares new path. Ex-billionaire rejects redemption arc. The speech that burned both bridges. Some praised his courage, others mocked his recklessness, but none could ignore him. By noon, however, the tide shifted. A new article surfaced on a gossip site, tagged with Victor Mallory's fingerprints. Who is Sarah Bennett, the single mother behind Kingsley's new persona? It wasn't subtle. The piece speculated on her finances, her past jobs, even hinted at inconsistencies in her record. Photos of Sarah entering the community center, Emily at her school, were splashed between paragraphs heavy with insinuation. Leonard slammed the laptop shut. His reflection stared back at him in the black screen, haunted, furious. This was no longer about him. It was about them. He drove himself this time, abandoning chauffeurs and armor. The community center door opened to chaos. Volunteers huddled around their phones. Parents whispered. Sarah stood in the middle, her face pale, her arms protectively around Emily. "They printed her name," Sarah said when she saw him, her voice tight. "My daughter's name. Do you have any idea what that means?" Leonard swallowed, the anger rising like fire. "I know exactly what it means, and I know who did it." "Then fix it," she snapped. "Because I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask you to bring your circus to our lives." Emily tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mum, it's okay." "No," Sarah said, kneeling to meet her daughter's eyes. "It's not okay. You deserve privacy. You deserve normal." Leonard's chest tightened. The article had weaponized innocence, and for the first time he realized that his choices could ruin what little safety they had. That night, Leonard showed up at Victor Mallory's penthouse unannounced. Security tried to stop him. They failed. Victor was pouring a drink when Leonard entered. "Leo," he said, smirking, "congratulations on trending. Twice." "You dragged a child into this," Leonard growled. Victor raised his glass. "Correction, I dragged a narrative into this. Don't confuse the two. You made yourself boring at the Garrick. Investors don't like boring, so I gave them scandal." "You think this makes you powerful?" "It makes me necessary," Victor replied smoothly. "Your little experiment in humility threatens to expose the game for what it is. If you tear down the stage, where will we perform? Better to discredit the props before the audience leaves." Leonard's fists clenched. He wanted to break the glass, the smirk, the entire empire of lies. But violence would only feed the story. So he said quietly, "You think you won, but you've already lost." Victor laughed. "Tell that to the headlines." The next day, Leonard called a press conference. No velvet ropes, no luxury hotels, just the steps of the community center. Cameras swarmed, hungry for spectacle. Sarah tried to stop him. "Don't you dare use us again." "I'm not," he said. "I'm protecting you." When the microphones pointed his way, he didn't wait for questions. "You want to know who Sarah Bennett is? She's a mother who works 2 jobs to give her daughter a chance at a life better than her own. She's a volunteer who holds this place together when no one funds it. She's someone who has more dignity in a single day than I had in a decade of wealth." Flashbulbs exploded. Reporters shouted. "And Emily?" Leonard's voice softened. "She's a child. Not a symbol, not a headline. Just a little girl who reminded me what humanity looks like. If you have to write about me, write about my failures. Write about my greed. Write about every card I ever declined to play with integrity. But leave them out of it." The crowd roared with questions. Leonard turned and walked back inside, where Sarah stood frozen, Emily clinging to her hand. "That won't stop them," Sarah whispered. "No," Leonard admitted, "but it tells them where I stand." That evening, donations began pouring into the community center. Anonymous checks, small online transfers, even boxes of supplies. For every cruel headline, a stranger's kindness arrived to balance the scales. Victor, of course, doubled down. He leaked financial documents, twisted old contracts, framed Sarah as opportunistic. But the more he attacked, the more obvious his malice became. For the first time, Leonard wasn't fighting to save himself. He was fighting to protect someone else, and that gave him a strength Victor couldn't match. Late that night, Leonard sat in the empty auditorium of the center. Emily appeared, holding a paper crown. "You dropped this?" she said with a grin. He smiled faintly. "I think it looks better on you." She climbed onto the stage, placed it on her head and declared, "Even the smallest seed can grow into something strong." The words echoed, the same line from her school play. And Leonard realized the truth. The world might mock him, destroy him, erase him. But if Emily and Sarah could keep standing, keep shining, then maybe, just maybe, so could he. By dawn, Victor Mallory had turned the screws again. Anonymous accounts blasted a clip stitched to make Leonard seem predatory. Slow-motion frames of him kneeling to speak to Emily on the steps. A grim voiceover asking why a disgraced tycoon spent so much time around a child. The edit was poisonous, precise, and timed for maximum spread. Leonard watched it in the community center office, jaw set. Outside, volunteers debated crisis statements. Inside, a different crisis unfolded. Sarah closed the door behind her. We need to talk. He nodded. Say it. You cannot come here anymore, she said, no tremor in her voice. Not for a while. Leonard felt the floor go out from under him. If I leave, Victor wins. If you stay, Emily loses. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. He is turning our lives into a stage. My daughter's friends are whispering. Parents are asking if we're safe. The center is getting calls demanding background checks on me. That is not a life. It is a spotlight, and spotlights burn. He wanted to argue. He wanted to promise that he could shield them. But every promise he had ever made, backed by money and bravado, had failed in the same way, ignoring the cost to someone else. What does "not for a while" mean? He asked. It means you help without being seen, she said. No cameras, no speeches, no grand gestures. If you want to protect us, disappear. He exhaled, a long surrender. All right. And one more boundary, she said. No calls to Emily. No messages through volunteers. If she asks, I'll tell her you're working on something important. That is all. It was the hardest sentence he had heard since the first time an investor told him he was replaceable. Understood. She softened just a fraction. This is not punishment. It is protection. For her, for me, maybe for you. He nodded. I'll set things up, quietly. Then go now, she said, hand on the door, before the next wave hits. He left by the back alley. No press. Only the weight of a choice that cut both ways. Victor's next wave arrived before noon. Her class action threat letter hit the center's inbox, claiming Leonard's presence had created unsafe conditions and deceptive fundraising. It was noise dressed as law, but enough to spook small donors. 2 corporate pledges paused, pending reputational review. Leonard read the letter from his apartment, then opened an encrypted drive he had not touched in years. Inside lived the documents that could gut Victor's power. Private placement memos with buried clauses, side letters that contradicted public filings, emails where Victor greenlit a shell charity that laundered reputation more than it moved resources. Legal war or silent resistance? He weighed the cost. Legal war would scorch everyone. The case would drag the center's name into filings, pull Sarah into depositions, put Emily in footnotes. Silent resistance would be slower, the victory invisible, the credit gone. He closed the drive without copying a file. Then he picked up the phone and called a number that still remembered his voice. Office of the Special Counsel, the woman answered. I have material for protected disclosure, Leonard said. On securities fraud, wire fraud, public charity misrepresentation. The principal actor is Victor Mallory. I will not be a named source. I want whistleblower status. A pause. We can discuss routing. Are you counseled? I will be, he said. But first I need an irrevocable trust drafted within 24 hours. The woman chuckled. That is not my department. It is mine, Leonard replied, and hung up. He called a trust attorney who had once constructed dynasties from tax code and cunning. Carve an irrevocable education and housing fund for children in our district, Leonard said. Seed it with 10 million now, art and land to follow. Trustees cannot include me. Distribution criteria must be public. I want an audit baked into the deed. Public? The attorney asked, startled. You usually wanted. I want it untouchable and unattributable. Set it up under a generic name. File today. You will lose control. That is the point. He sold 2 paintings by nightfall. The dealer asked if he was being extorted. Leonard said he was being corrected. News of the trust did not carry his name. The community center director told volunteers, who told parents, who told teachers. The city murmured. The money arrived without a benefactor to put on a plaque. It felt clean. Victor sensed the move anyway. He thrived on control. The absence of a target unstrung him. So he tried a new angle. An influencer posted a grainy photo of Sarah entering a law office and claimed she was cashing in. The comment section turned caustic again. Sarah texted Leonard a single line. It's fine, we're okay. He typed 3 different replies, deleted each one, threw his phone on the couch and stared at the ceiling until the lines in the plaster blurred. Silent resistance meant silence, even when asked for comfort. 3 days passed. Donations stabilized. The threat letter withered after a pro bono firm sent a reply footnoted like a thesis. The center resumed its rhythm. Leonard kept his distance. On the 4th day, the whistleblower office called. "We've opened a preliminary review," the investigator said. "We will likely coordinate with SEC and State AG. We will not need you in person if documentation is authenticated. Expect months, not weeks." "Understood." "And Leonard," the investigator added, voice thinner now, human, "you're doing the right thing." "Tell that to the headlines," he said, echoing Victor's earlier sneer without meaning to. "Headlines don't indict," she replied, and ended the call. That evening, Leonard walked without destination, hands in his coat, city moving around him untouched by his history. He stopped at a hardware store and bought sandpaper, wood glue, a hobby knife. Back home, he sat at his table and rebuilt a toy plane he had once planned to throw away. He shaved imperfections, glued a cracked fin, sanded until the surface remembered softness. He could not be seen to help. He could still learn to make something quiet and sturdy. Victor scrambled. He pitched a children's fund gala within 48 hours, complete with celebrity hosts and a promise to match anonymous district grants. It was theft with flowers, but matching meant admitting there was something to match. The city noticed the cadence. The press asked where the anonymous grants came from. Victor deflected and smiled too hard. His mask began to slip at the edges. That night, an email leaked from one of Victor's staffers to a blogger Leonard had never met. It contained a calendar invite titled Crisis Sequencing, Bennett Storyline, Phase 2. The bullet points were short and surgical. Escalate instability angle. Pressure school board child welfare. Feed whistleblower rumor to muddle narrative. Secure gala optics to reset. The blogger posted the screenshot. The city inhaled as one. For the first time, the smear looked like a plan rather than a discovery. For the first time, Sarah's boundaries felt like wisdom rather than distance. Leonard did not celebrate. He drafted a statement he would never deliver. "I am the reason these wolves came. I cannot be the reason they stay." He saved it, then closed the file. A knock at his door broke the quiet. He expected a courier. He found Sarah. She stood in the hall, hair pulled back, eyes clear from sleep for the first time in days. "I said no visits," she began, "and I meant it, but we have to talk once." He stepped aside. She remained in the doorway. "Thank you," she said. "Not for the press conference, for the absence, it helped." He swallowed. "Is Emily all right?" "She is rehearsing lines," Sarah said, a corner of her mouth lifting. "She wants to play the seed that turns into a tree. Of course she does." Silence settled, not uncomfortable, just full. Sarah glanced past him to the table. The plane lay there, half-sanded, wings clamped. "You're fixing things you could have thrown away." "I am trying to be useful the only way I can," he said. She nodded. "Keep trying. But remember, this story is bigger than either of us. If the investigation comes, it will be long. People will say things. You cannot answer every lie without becoming one." "I know. And if it goes badly," she added, meeting his eyes, "do not come back here to hide. Stand in the open and take the weather." He almost laughed. "You think I would run?" "I think you used to," she said. "I think you are learning." He wanted to say 100 things that lived in his throat and died on his tongue. Instead, he reached for the only clean truth he had. "I will keep the distance. I will keep the trust funded. I will keep my name off the door. And when the storm hits, I will not use your roof." "Good," she said. "Then we can both sleep." She took one step back. He almost asked her to wait. He didn't. Boundaries were only real when honored in the small moments, too. "Tell her," he said, stopping himself, then finishing anyway. "Tell her I'm working on something important." "I already did," Sarah said. She believed me. She left, and the door clicked softly back into the frame. 2 weeks later, the first subpoena went out. Not to Leonard, to Victor. Another followed. Then, a notice of document preservation from the Attorney General's office, copied to a list of entities, with Victor's fingerprints pressed into their bylaws. Victor went on television in a navy suit and declared the witch hunt politicized. His smile looked like a bandage, his eyes like the wound. Leonard watched from his couch and said nothing. He sanded the last edge of the wing, brushed the dust away, and pressed the pieces together until the seam refused to show. He held the plane up to the lamp, turned it once, and, for the first time in years, felt the quiet victory of building something that did not require an audience. He set it down gently and for a long time listened to the kind of silence that does not accuse. Victor Mallory was losing his grip. The subpoenas had arrived like silent missiles. His lawyers scrambled, his staff leaked, and the perfect facade he had curated for decades began to fracture under the weight of scrutiny. But Victor was nothing if not vicious. He doubled down, determined to drag Leonard, Sarah, and the community center into the mud with him. That morning, a new article hit the press. Charity under fire. Was the center a front for Kingsley's redemption play? The piece cited anonymous insiders who claimed the donations were irregular, that the trust itself was a shell for Leonard's comeback strategy. The center's phones lit up with angry calls. A school board requested a meeting to assess potential safety risks. And Emily, bright, resilient Emily, came home in tears after classmates repeated cruel words their parents had read aloud at breakfast. Leonard's blood boiled. For the first time since stepping away, he considered breaking Sarah's boundary, storming into the school, announcing that the trust was untouchable, that the smears were lies, but he didn't. He called the trust attorney instead. Release the first audit publicly. Show every dollar, show every clause that keeps me out of control, and do it before sundown. The attorney hesitated. That level of transparency, do it, Leonard said. Truth only matters if you don't ration it. By evening, the audit was everywhere. Line by line, it proved that the trust was real, untouchable, and fully dedicated to the children. Not a single signature bore Leonard's name. The backlash began to wobble. Inside Victor's office, a storm brewed. One of his own VPs, Harper Long, stared across the table with an expression somewhere between defiance and resignation. "This is getting out of hand, Victor," she said. "Dragging a child into headlines, smearing a community center, that's not optics, that's cruelty." Victor sneered. "Don't pretend you care about morality, Harper. You care about margins. I care about survival," she shot back. "And right now you're dragging us toward collapse." Silence stretched. Victor's other executives shifted in their chairs, their loyalty cracking under the weight of subpoenas and public disgust. It was the first real fracture in Victor's empire. Meanwhile, Leonard sat in his apartment staring at the half-repaired toy plane. He had expected relief after the audit release. Instead, he felt hollow. Sarah texted him that evening. "The audit helped. Thank you." But Emily is shaken. She doesn't understand why people hate us. He typed a reply, erased it, and finally sent, "Because the world is afraid of what it can't control, but she is stronger than their fear." No answer came. The next day, the community center was tested like never before. An anonymous complaint filed with Child Services triggered an inspection. Officials arrived with clipboards, questioning staff, walking the halls, making notes while children rehearsed for their upcoming play. Parents looked on nervously, unsure whether to defend or retreat. Sarah met Leonard outside in the alley, her expression a mask of exhaustion. "This is what he does," she whispered. "He weaponizes the system, and we can't fight every attack without losing ourselves." Leonard clenched his fists. "Then let me carry it. Let me put my name on the fire." "No," she said sharply. "That gives him exactly what he wants, a public war with you in the middle. The only way we win is by being better, by being untouchable." Her voice broke slightly, and Leonard's heart ached. He wanted to step closer, to promise he could shield her and Emily from everything. But promises were cheap, action was costly. "Then tell me what to do," he said quietly. She hesitated, then finally said, "Show up where no one's watching. Do the work no one thanks you for, and never stop funding what they can't steal." He nodded. Done. That weekend, Leonard appeared at the center's loading dock at dawn. No press, no entourage. Just him, a pair of work gloves, and the stubborn desire to matter in silence. He carried boxes. He sorted coats. He scrubbed graffiti from a wall until his hands blistered. Volunteers glanced at him with a mixture of disbelief and respect, but no one pulled out a phone. It was their unspoken pact. Let the man work, not pose. For the first time in years, Leonard felt useful without applause. Meanwhile, Victor's mask slipped further. The leaked email chain, crisis sequencing, Bennett storyline, Phase 2, made the rounds on talk shows and blogs. His denials grew shrill, his interviews hostile. Investors began whispering the word replaceable. The final blow came when Harper Long resigned publicly, citing irreconcilable differences with leadership strategy. She didn't mention Victor's name, but she didn't need to. The silence said everything. That night, Sarah invited Leonard to the center after hours. Emily was asleep in a back room, the paper crown beside her on a folded jacket. "I saw you this weekend," Sarah said softly. "The kids saw you too, not the headlines, the work, that matters." Leonard looked down, almost ashamed. "It's not enough." "It's more than I expected," she said. Then, after a pause, "I don't know what will happen when Victor falls, but when he does, make sure you don't become him by accident." He nodded. "I promise." She studied him for a long moment. "Keep proving it." When Leonard left, the city lights felt different, less like judgment, more like witness. Victor's empire was cracking. The investigation was circling. The smear campaign was backfiring, but the war wasn't over. And Leonard knew that the final battle would not be fought in headlines or boardrooms, but in the choices he made, when no one was watching. By Monday morning, the city woke to two truths. The audit had held, and the smear had cracked. What remained was the reckoning. It began with a sound no one could film, Harper Long's footsteps in a marble corridor at dawn. She wasn't alone. Two federal investigators walked with her, carrying a single leather folder and a narrow, well-practiced silence. They didn't arrest anyone. They didn't raise their voices. They asked for a conference room with a door that shut. Inside, Harper slid her resignation letter across the polished table, then placed a flash drive on top of it. "This isn't about redemption arcs," she said evenly. "It's about fraud." The agent nodded, gloved hand covering the drive like a lid on a boiling pot. "Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Long. We'll be in touch." By lunch, 3 subpoenas turned into 20. Compliance officers began walking files down the stairs in cardboard banker's boxes, and for the first time in years, Victor Mallory didn't have a single camera pointed at him. He called producers. They didn't pick up. The last call he made was to his fixer. "How bad is it?" he asked, voice brittle but steady. "Bad," came the answer. "And different. You taught people to hate a man. Now they're tired of hating, they want proof." Victor hung up and stared through the window at a sky that refused to darken just because he needed it to. He told himself he could still win. He told himself the same story he had always believed. Control is a muscle, power a habit. He straightened his tie, rehearsed a statement, and stepped into the hallway to meet the storm. No one was there. Silence was the first consequence, obscurity the second. Across town, in a room that still smelled faintly of paint and paper crowns, Leonard laid out photocopies on a folding table. The trust charter, the open audit, the receipt for every crate of books and every winter coat. The board of the community center didn't need theatrics. They needed certainty. He gave them that line by line. "We won't survive on outrage," he said. "We'll survive on routine, budgets reconciled, doors open on time, lights turned off at night. Do the small things right and the big lies run out of oxygen." Sarah watched him from the back, arms folded, face unreadable. When the meeting ended, she stayed behind as the board trickled out. "You kept your promise," she said. "I'm trying to keep all of them," he answered. "Don't," she said softly. "Just keep this one." He nodded. In the nap room, Emily slept with her paper crown bent against her cheek. The toy cash register, the one she had used the day everything began, sat on a shelf in the corner. Sarah had replaced the fake bills with math cards. The drawer no longer rang like a bell. It clicked like a lesson learned. The first arrest didn't land on headlines. It landed on a desk. A junior accountant, cornered by the evidence Harper supplied, chose truth over terror and told investigators what they really needed to know. The dates, the signatures, the shell accounts, with names that sounded like air fresheners. From there, the thread pulled easily. By Wednesday, agents arrived at Victor's office with a warrant that didn't tremble. Cameras eventually found their way to the sidewalk, but by then, the story had already moved inside. There were no shouting matches, no cuffed perp walks for the 6 o'clock news. Just measured voices, a few sealed envelopes, and the quiet collapse of a man who had forgotten that the world runs on more than fear. Victor did not weep. He did what he'd always done, calculated. This is temporary, he told himself, a weather event. But there is a difference between a storm and a season. One passes, the other changes what grows. When the agents left, they took nothing that could fit in a pocket and everything that could not be rebuilt. The illusion that Victor Mallory was inevitable. His board convened that night without him. Their statement the next morning was a single page: leadership transition, full cooperation, interim stewardship by a committee that didn't smile. The market did the rest. Leonard did not gloat. He didn't post, didn't call, didn't comment. Instead, he drove to a small beige building 9 miles from downtown and sat in a plastic chair beneath a buzzing light. On his lap lay a check, large enough to end a waiting list, small enough to be believable. The director of the after-school program blinked when she saw the amount. "It has to be in someone else's name," Leonard said. "Put it through the trust if you want, or the center. It can't come from me." "Why?" she asked. "Because the help should outlive the headline." She nodded slowly. "People don't talk like that." "They do," he said, "when they lose the right things." He left before anyone could take a picture. The apology, when it came, was not cinematic. Victor did not show up with cameras at the community center doors. He did not kneel, did not beg, did not quote new revelations about the meaning of life. He sent a letter, 4 sentences, typed, signed with a hand that had started to shake. To the child I used to point at and call a story. To the woman I pretended was a device. To the man I taught people to hate so I could harvest their attention. I am sorry. Sarah read it once, then once more. She put it back in the envelope and set it in a drawer with a broken pencil and an unopened pack of crayons. Leonard never asked to see it. Emily would find it years later, after she no longer needed it. On a rain-bright Saturday, the center held its small play in a squeaky gym with a handmade backdrop that looked like a skyline drawn by children who loved straight lines more than perspective. Parents clapped in the right places and too loudly in the wrong ones. The sound system buzzed, the lights flickered. 2 kids forgot their lines, 1 whispered them back. Everyone kept going. Backstage, Emily tugged Sarah's sleeve. "Can I wear the crown?" she asked. "After the show," Sarah said. "Costumes are for everyone right now." Emily nodded, grave as a judge, then ran out for her scene. Paper name tag crooked, sneakers triple knotted. During the final tableau, Leonard stood in the back with a mop he'd grabbed without thinking. He didn't know his cue because he didn't have one. He just waited, then leaned the mop against the wall as the children bowed. After, in the whirl of juice boxes and cupcakes, Emily appeared in front of him like a verdict, the paper crown finally on her head. "I remember you," she said. "From the store." He smiled. "I remember you." "From the drawer." She frowned, considering. "That was my money." "It was," he said, "and it saved me." And she thought about this, then nodded, satisfied. "Okay," she said, and skipped away, the crown tilting like a sailor's hat. Sarah came up behind him. "You held the mop wrong," she said. "I've been practicing," he said, mock offended. "We noticed," she said, and the softness in her voice was the first door he had been allowed to open in months. They stood watching the children sprint in wild figure 8s. On the far wall, a poster read, "What you do matters when no one is watching." The tape holding it up had started to peel. Leonard smoothed it with his palm. "Will he go to prison?" Emily asked later, appearing between them without noise, eyes not afraid of the answer. "I don't know," Sarah said, "but he will face what he did." Emily considered again. She was good at that. "Okay," she said. "Can we go get bread now, the kind with the seeds?" Sarah laughed. "Yes, the kind with the seeds." Leonard reached for his coat. "I'll walk you." Sarah hesitated, then handed him the toy cash register. "Carry this," she said. "It's heavy." He took it like a relay baton. On the way out, a volunteer called after them. "You forgot your umbrella." Leonard turned. "We'll share," he said. 3 figures under one small canopy stepped into the glittering rain. No one filmed it. No one cared to. Cars hissed past. A bus sighed at the curb. Above them, grey broke into a quiet brightness, the kind that makes ordinary sidewalks look like stages and every small kindness a spotlight. They reached the corner store. The bell on the door made that same bright sound, the one that had always been there, waiting to be heard for what it was. A welcome. At the register, Emily stood on tiptoe and placed the seeded loaf on the counter. The cashier, older, kinder, the kind of person who remembers faces, smiled at her crown. "Big day?" he asked. "Big enough," Emily said. Leonard took out his card. He looked at it for a beat longer than necessary, as if weighing the past in a palm. Then he put it away and reached for cash. Creased, unremarkable bills. "It's on me," he said. Sarah didn't protest. She let it be simple. The drawer slid open with an ordinary ring. Not a miracle, not a metaphor, just a sound that meant someone had paid what was owed. Outside, rain softened to a mist. Emily tore the heel off the bread and handed it first to Sarah, then to Leonard, then bit into her piece with the satisfaction of a child who has already learned the lesson adults take decades to understand. Value is not the same as price. They ate as they walked, leaving a wake of sesame and poppy seeds like a map back to the place they were building together. Slowly, quietly, in a city that had finally stopped staring and started seeing. No speeches, no headlines, just the work, just enough.